Hi, everybody. I'm Yishai Fleisher. I'm the international spokesman for the Jewish community of Hebron, and I try to get out there to the world and push Israel's narrative. And this is 18 questions of 40 Israeli thinkers from 1840.
So we'll begin where we always do. As an Israeli and as a Jew, how are you feeling at this moment in Israeli history?
Ooh, that's a big question. How am I feeling about Israeli history? Well, on the one hand, I feel very happy just even to come into Jerusalem today. Even those small things, it's just exciting to see it being built. I saw a new building coming up and I'm just like, wow, Jerusalem is being built. It's pumping. My kids are on Tiyulim today on hikes because it's a beautiful day, and the Ezra movement took them to hikes. So there's a lot of beauty, a lot of awesomeness. But I'm also a lot of times just frustrated with Israeli weakness, with a sense that Israel doesn't take care of business fully to defend its soldiers and to defend its peoplehood the way it should. We got a green light from the American president. Not that I think that Israel should rely totally on American presidents, but we got a green light to destroy Hamas, to evict them. That's not happening. And so a lot of the slowness that happens in Israeli politics is frustrating to me, to see the jihad be strong all around us, to live not far away from jihadists who are really neo-Nazis and have a sick ideology, and that's not being taken care of. So those moments are very frustrating. So it's the best of times and the worst of times. It is the best of times, but it is frustrating that we're not as fast as we could be to ensure Jewish safety.
Why frustrated?
Because I don't want to see Jews being killed. And I think that we just don't act in a way that makes Middle East sense.
Can you say more about that?
Well, the Middle East has certain rules. There's certain ways to succeed in the Middle East. And the most basic way is you have to get respect. And the way you get respect is acting clearly, forthrightly, asserting your claim, and push back on people that want to hate you. And so if there's people who are jihadists in your land, even by the rules of the Middle East, not to mention the rules of the Torah, not to mention the rules of common sense, you got to get rid of them. You got to push them out. You can't allow people that hate you and plan to destroy you to live amongst you, not to mention be the doctors in your hospital or the drivers of your buses. Every single day when I think of my kids going on a bus, a terror goes through me, which is exactly what they want. And that some Arab bus driver who may have jihadist inclinations in his heart is gonna just, take the bus off the road, and that is terrifying, and we should not allow that. And we should not allow Jewish children, women, or men to be afraid in our land. There's no reason for it. We are a strong country, and we have a right to allow the kind of people that want to live here, the good kind of people that want to follow the laws and be loyal Israeli residents to live here, and those who hate our country should not. And these are plain things. It's simple things. You get frustrated that the discourse is not plain. I believe in
Plain how?
Plain in reducing things to plain values, to simple values.
What does that mean practically?
It means that you should not allow people who hate your country to live amongst you. You should not allow them to get illegal arms. Judea and Samaria is flooded with arms that have flown in through Jordan, through Iran. We know that. We know that almost every Arab house has guns, and we know that at any point it could turn.
So you're saying almost every Arab house has illegal guns?
That's right.
Where does that number come from, or where does that
The police? The
I mean,
police
that's
reports.
that's a statistic?
Yeah, absolutely. They estimate about 400,000 illegal weapons, and everybody knows that's a low estimate. And I had the privilege of working with the Minister of Police for a while, and we know. We know. You could see it at any wedding. It's not hidden. Everybody knows about it. You could see it in the videos, of Hamas in Gaza. And if in Gaza they have weapons, certainly in Judea and Samaria, which is more porous, there's weapons. So we know there's illegal weapons. We know that there's bad guys around us.
Just not to harp on this too much, but 400,000 of among several million wouldn't
Not several million. About 2 million in Judea and Samaria, maybe. Some people say less. So, and that's people. Reduce it now to households. So as I said, about, you know what I mean? There's a lot of guns out there. There's a lot of illegal weapons. The exact number is not the concern, because let me tell you something. Every M16 can do tremendous damage to a bus, like as we saw a few weeks ago. So the bottom line is we have a lot of bad guys. We should not allow them to have weapons and to threaten our country. And we have a lot of people who are decent people, Arabs and others, who want to live amongst us. And the Torah tells us that there will be goyim nations that want to live amongst us, and we have to provide them with decencies and opportunities. I don't deny that for a second. I don't deny for a second that there are many Arabs who are not part of the jihad. But just realistically speaking, you see the videos of the children filled with anti-Israel ideology. You see that you saw the story now of the Muslim doctors in Australia, the doctor and the nurse who were just professing anti-Israel. That they're willing to kill Israeli patients. You know that exists here as well. Although I have to admit, I was recently in the hospital. And I had a very good stay. I was for a week in the hospital after surgery, and I dealt with a lot of Arab nurses, and it was fine. It was really, really fine. I don't deny that it could be fine, but the state of Israel has to be strong. the state of Israel, the state of Israel, the state of Israel has to be strong. It has to be strong. It has to push back on forces that endanger it. That is the central purpose of a state in general, and certainly the Jewish state. We're a people that have been persecuted for 2,000 years, and now we're supposed to defend ourselves. And that's the rules of the Middle East. That's the way you survive as any entity in the Middle East.
What do you think has been Israel's greatest success and greatest mistake in the current war against Hamas, or the war against Hamas? Because arguably it's not.
When you first started asking that, I heard, what is Israel's greatest success? Period. And what is Israel's greatest success? Bringing the Jewish people back home?
Well, again, specifically in the war against Hamas.
Right. I'm getting there. It's just you triggered a thought like, what's Israel's greatest success? I thought to myself, bringing the Jewish people back home, allowing Jews to survive, to thrive, and to allow Yiddishkeit, Judaism, to survive and thrive. That's the greatest success. Vis-a-vis this war, what has been our greatest success? The beeper attack was the beeper operation was a beautiful operation. It was
against
very
Hamas
precise.
Specifically, though, unless you see
Against
those two as
Hamas,
more directly linked.
the killing of Sinwar was important, but the truth is I think that we have not been as successful against Hamas as we should have been. So I can't really count it as a great success. I count it actually as so far a loss and not a victory.
What's a loss?
And it's a loss that we have after 500 days of war. We have not destroyed the Hamas, and that they're able to parade in Gaza with their jeeps and their guns and to toy with our hostages. We have not been able to release the hostages in a military campaign. Instead, we've given them their prisoners, their murderers. So to me, there has not been a great success against Hamas. The very fact that they're around is exactly a proof that that has not been a success. I say this because I just look at things objectively. I'm not always trying to look at things like, to pat ourselves on the shoulder. I think that we should have eliminated Hamas. Moreover, I think that Israel should have made it clear that it will now control the Gaza Strip. And it never made that clear. And in fact, it never really did control the Gaza Strip properly. That's our land, our ancestral land, our biblical land, our historical land. We controlled it till 2005. We're the only ones that can govern it. We're the only ones. Nobody else can govern it effectively. And sadly, we haven't done that. Now the Trump plan has come out. Even that, I would take over the current jihadist control of Gaza. But it's slow. And they're really, October 7th was your right to act carte blanche. You can do whatever you want. Do whatever you want. Take care of business. You have Israeli public is with you. The world is with you. And even if they're not with you, it is a justification to act
What would you have
unilaterally.
what would you have wanted to happen?
I think, for me, it's really clear. It's really simple. And first thing is, as the rules of war, you first turn off the water, the electricity, the fuel, and certainly the so-called humanitarian aid, the food that came into Gaza. You just stop that. You stop that. You make it into a siege. Siege is, by the way, legal in international law. You besiege that place. Move out all the civilians that want out, find them a way out. And then whoever's left as a combatant, fight them, liberate our hostages by use of force, not by use of diplomacy.
Isn't that arguably how Israel orchestrated the military campaign, by trying to clear out civilians in Gaza and then?
We did not clear out civilians out
I mean,
of Gaza
not
totally.
entirely, but
We
in
kept
certain
moving them
areas.
around inside. We allowed tons of food to flow in. That food fed the Hamas and also empowered them vis-a-vis the population. And we did not use overwhelming force to get our hostages back.
What do you mean by that? Meaning,
I
many
mean-
military experts and those in the government felt that effectively the outcome from the beginning of whichever hostages had come out in the course of the war was exactly the best that really could have been done, given that they were all spread out, given that they were hidden in tunnels, given that they weren't accessible, and that there could be instances in which a military campaign could lead to their deaths. Are you saying meaning, what do you see differently than that?
First thing, the majority of the hostages have died. So liberating them by use of force right from the beginning would have yielded some losses, but also a show of strength.
But when you say liberate them by force, I'm just trying to understand what you mean by that, because they weren't all located in one place. So what do you envision that looking like?
Surely, with respect, the very question that you're asking shows me how deeply we have gone down the rabbit hole of not understanding what force is. Gaza is our little neighbor. It's a 400 square kilometer sandbox right next door. We've literally allowed an organization to create a terror tunnel world. We're supposed to have this great military intelligence, yet we're not able to liberate our own hostages right next door. 1976, we flew to Uganda. Here we can't get into, use all of our special forces, all of this intelligence. We can't get our guys. Of course we can. We could have, but they were afraid. They were afraid of the leadership. They were afraid of the Biden administration. They were afraid of, the Israeli, left, arguing that they're callous. And they're afraid of them, and they simply did not have the guts to make a type of war that was going to be unilateral and victorious, to vanquish. That word, vanquish. I mean, what did Netanyahu promise us? He promised us that at the end of this, there wouldn't be a Hamas and they wouldn't control Gaza. In the meantime, and I hope that by the time this podcast plays, I'll be totally wrong. But in the meantime, what we see is that we have not destroyed them utterly.
Do you feel like Netanyahu failed you?
Absolutely. On the one hand, I think that he's a great statesman, and I think that he's a great leader, and I have no doubt that one day his face will be on our money. But on the other hand, he voted for the 2005 disengagement, which we left our own land and gave it over to the PA, and then Hamas took it over. Then he channeled funding from Qatar to Hamas. We know that. Then allowed them to build up a military infrastructure underneath our nose, and then released 1,000 of their prisoners that we held in our prisons. For one Gilad Shalit, those prisoners became the leaders of the October 7th massacre. So yeah, very much so. Like, that's a fail. And not a lot of people, the position that I'm taking is not very popular to say on this kind of forum, but that's the truth, I think. And then this 500-day war that was not a war to vanquish our enemies and to take Gaza over and to say, I've made a mistake, and to destroy the bad guys and make sure that they're not around anymore. In the meantime, they are parading our hostages, which they were able to keep successfully from us, parading them around on the world stage with cameras and guns and Toyotas. Yeah, that's a fail. And I think that seeing any other way is just trying to pat ourselves on the back and to feel good. Like the other day, they released these murderers, these people that murdered like 40 Israelis. They released them, but they released them with sweatshirts that said "Lo nishkach, lo nislach." They released them with these sweatshirts saying, "We will not forget, we will not forget, we will not forgive." And people were like, "Wow, that Israel really showed them. What a joke! What an absolute joke! You released murderers of Jews back into society, and then you think you won a point because you made them wear a sweatshirt? It's childish, it's babyish, and it's certainly it's like this kind of like uber Westernism. Instead of realizing where you live, you don't let people who murdered 40 Jews out. Why don't you let Eichmann out? Like, what is this about? What is this about? So yeah, absolutely. And I despise the weakness But the other hand, I'm a religious person. I mean, I believe in God. I believe in God. I believe in Torah. I believe in the process of Hashem. And I see that many of the families of the hostages are putting on tefillin and keeping Shabbos. There's beauty that comes out through this, and I see a lot of change in Israeli society, positive change. So there are many good things. There are many good vectors. But there are some vectors of weakness, which I just abhor. And it happens to be I'm also a Russian Jew. My parents are Russian Jews, and I don't like this whole like get the world to see our pain. I don't need the world to see our pain. I don't need the world to understand how bad the other side is. I don't need to get a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? Sympathy. I don't need sympathy. I don't need that. Somebody's trying to attack my people, we destroy them. Be ruthless against people who are ruthless against you. You know, like you end up being merciful to the wicked. So I don't like this the whole time that we live in. I don't like the whole hostages dialogue. Like we're all watching them. They come out. They're embracing the families, and we've become these people that we watch a soap opera trying to the hostage. What about all the soldiers that fell? What about all the soldiers that lost arms and limbs? Well, what about all the hostages that didn't come out? Like, where's all that? Like, where's the rage? Where's the hate? You got to hate evil. There's a mitzvah in the Torah. Ohavei Hashem sin'u ra. Lovers of Hashem should hate evil. We should hate Hamas. By the way, Hamas is not just bad to the Jews. Right now, as we speak, as we're doing this podcast, they're shooting and killing any Arabs who have said anything pro-Israel. They are a brutal lot, and our inability to take them on, and our inability to even say these things. The things that I'm saying now are things that you rarely hear on the media, and yet many people think it. Is a sign that we live in a time of weakness.
How have your religious views changed since October 7th?
They have not.
What do you mean by that?
What do you mean by that?
You tell me.
What religious views were supposed to change?
Not supposed to change, but may have changed. Adapted, developed, been challenged.
The shocking thing that I tell media a lot of times is that I say to them, I play with them, I say to them, you know what really changed in me since October 7th? They're like, what? I'm like, nothing. What changed? That we should hold on to the land of Israel? That we should get back to a consciousness of the biblical land and the love of the book of Bereshit and the love of our peoplehood. And
does that surprise you?
What?
That nothing changed?
No, nothing changed in me.
Yeah, no, meaning that nothing changed in your religious views.
Why would it change? We foresaw in 2005, my wife and I were sent by Arutz Sheva down to, we worked for Arutz Sheva at the time, Israel National News. We were sent down to Gaza to cover and frankly to protest the Gaza disengagement. And what we said out loud, day in, day out, for many months, is that if you give away this land, the Hamas or whatever jihadist entity at the time will take over this thing. It could be Al-Qaeda, it could be Muslim Brotherhood, it could be whatever. ISIS, something is going to take it over, and then they're going to make war from this land. It's going to become a forward base of the jihad.
So in many ways, you saw this coming.
Absolutely, and that's on record. You don't have to take my word for it. It's all on record. You can just go back. We did tens and tens of hundreds of shows from Gush Katif. I was broadcasting from them from Gaza, and we saw it so clearly. It's not rocket science. You give the jihad a piece of land, it uses it. It's just people want to deny basic Middle East facts. So nothing changed, and just clarified and hardened those positions. The only thing that changed in me is a certain element of frustration, because I would have thought that after October the 7th, we would be like, all right, come on, let's stop playing around. This isn't working. Look what happened to our people. This is just horrific. You can't let a crisis go to waste. A horrible crisis, like, okay, it should be like a crisis, but that, I guess I've gotten some more frustration, and I'm working on that, religiously speaking, to kind of rid myself of the sense of frustration, because it's not my world, it's Hashem's world, and we have to take it at his pace. But there's a frustration. But in terms of an ideological or religious change, no, none whatsoever.
Shifting gears a little bit to talk more generally about Israeli society and Israeli government, What do you look for in deciding which Knesset party to vote for?
Um, when you go to America and you go to a conference like CPAC, you see so clearly that they have their positions on a range of issues really laid out. They know what abortion or pro life is, they know what Second Amendment gun rights are or not. They have a real sense that they know about small government versus big government. They have a very keen and written out sense of their positions vis-a-vis a gamut of issues, and they understand what it is to be on the right and on the left, and they're very formed and thought out positions. And the pundits speak about it, and you go to a conference, you go to their expo, there's a table for Second Amendment, and they have all the rights and they explain to you the Constitution. Here in Israel, it's much looser and much less defined.
What's
We
looser?
the what conceptions of right or left,
Uh-huh.
whatever your political conceptions are. So for example, there are so-called right-wing parties that don't want to give away the land of Israel and want to undo the two-state solution and the Palestinian Authority. But then they kind of vote to continue to pay the Palestinian Authority, and even though they're in the Treasury Ministry. And when it comes to a financial fiscal policy, they're pretty much socialist, and they don't really work to undo bureaucracy, and they don't understand the difference between small government and big government, and they're perfectly fine with big government. So they may be on the right on one issue, but they're on what we would understand from American way of thinking on the left on other issues. For example, COVID, the same thing with the whole vaccines and the lockdowns and the passports. There's no sense of the other. There was no other side to speak of here in Israel. So when I look for a political party, yes, I want to see them work towards the end of the two-state solution, to defund the Palestinian Authority, to assert sovereignty over Judea and Samaria. But that's really just one issue. What about fiscal policy? What about statesmanship? There's very few statesmen in the cadre of Knesset members. So, I sometimes wish we had a more formed political outlook and more transparency and to really rid the country of bureaucracy. I mean, just speak to people who are trying to make aliyah. I mean, the amount of paperwork that you have to bring to show, and if you have to have a FBI check, a
Background check.
background check, and then you have to have it all apostilled, and if it doesn't pass in 6 months, if 6 months passes, you got to get it again. We make things hard. I have many friends who are businessmen. They say we Israel makes it hard. I myself had a Israeli amutah. I had to close it down because it was too hard to manage. So the point is that I wish Israel, our beloved Israel, of which we've waited for 2,000 years, of which I am a passionate. It's my whole life. But when I look for a political party, I wish I could look for a little bit more than just the one
Can you
security
give a couple
issue.
of brief examples of what you would like those positions to be on, let's say fiscal or otherwise?
I would like to see a debureaucratization. I'd like to see that. You know what I mean? I'd like
Like a
to see.
Doge for
Yeah,
for Israel,
absolutely.
Department of
But
Government
it's a
Efficiency.
socialist country. It's a socialist country, and therefore it is big government is the modus operandi of it. It's from the get go a big country, a big government country, and that's a problem. I'd love to see Doge for pensions and for army pensions and for salaries that are being paid here. I'd love to see um, I'd love to see making businesses, starting businesses to make them easier. By the way, there is one department that they have made making businesses easier. That's in high tech. But the rest, help people be more entrepreneurial. I'd like to see us do a lot of other things. For example, I don't see us doing any effective speaking in Arabic. It's almost absurd. The Arab world right next door to us has no teachings of what is Judaism, what is Zionism. I mean, they have teachings from the jihad exclusively, and we never talk to them properly. We never talk to them. The best people who speak in Arabic to the Arab world are all private citizens on X, on Twitter, that are doing their thing. But like the government, it has a very poor a PR campaign towards the Arab world. We have to accept that we live in the Arab world. We have to learn Arabic. I wish every grade school would teach Arabic, because every kid should understand this region. And more. There are many things that I would love to. And I'll give you you know what? I'll give you three quick examples, three quick ones, okay? I call it three things that we take for granted. One, the Dead Sea. We have one of the most beautiful, natural occurring bodies of water in the world. It's just gorgeous. It's a world-class site. And yet we're drying it out. We're mistreating it. We barely have developed it. We have a few hotels in the south where we're drying it out. But to make it into in America, it would be a national park. You wouldn't be able to do anything on it. Okay, I would make it into it's a World Heritage Site. It's a national Israeli park. I would protect it, fix it, make sure that it's not getting dried out. That's the Dead Sea. Another one is medicine. We're the Jews. We should be teaching medicine to the world. And yet some of our best students, who are not the number one students, end up having to go to Bologna, Jamaica, Hungary to study medicine. I would make giant medical schools and then invite the world to study here. We should be Bologna. We should be Jamaica. People should be coming here to study with the Jews, and then get a certificate saying, like, you studied in Israel. And then, in Africa, and you see a nurse that studied in Israel and she's got that certificate. Everybody's like, wow, you went to Tel Aviv, you went to Jerusalem to study medicine. That's amazing. You know what I mean? Wow, you studied with the Jews. You must have really learned something. And so then we take that for granted tremendously. We take for granted our own youth. And finally, something that is really problematic is that we take the Bible for granted. Let me ask you a question, Sruli. Do we have a museum of the Bible here in Israel?
Oh, no, I'm answering the question?
I'm asking you, do we have a museum of the Bible?
I'm gonna guess no.
No, we really don't. There's something called the Bible Lands Museum. It's really the museum of the Avodah Zarah that existed in the land of Israel before the Jewish people came. You go to Washington, D.C. on the Mall. There is an amazing museum. It's partially Christian, but it's an amazing museum of the Bible. We should be so jealous. We should have a museum of the Bible and a Bible theme park. Have you ever been to Colonial Williamsburg in America, no, where you can go back 300 years and see the founding of America? Imagine if we had Abraham Land. You came there and you really felt that you were back in Bible times, and you put on the clothes and you did the whole thing. We underdo the natural asset that we have, which is the Bible. You don't have to be religious, but the world has read the Bible. The world loves the Bible. And yet, we're famous for having, Hebrew University's Bible criticism department, instead of really teaching the love of the stories of the Bible. We take for granted these three things: our medicine, our Dead Sea, our Bible. Now I say, and I'll give you just one last one. You know what else we take for granted? Our Jerusalem. Jerusalem. Do you know that ancient cartography was basically based first, the creation of maps was based on creating maps about the Terra Sancta, the Holy Land, and Jerusalem. And yet, when you drive from Gush Etzion to Yerushalayim, there's a little sign that says, Yerushalayim. I would make a golden arch at every entrance in Jerusalem. And I would make it so that when you come to Yerushalayim, you're like, whoa, there's the eternal city. There's Yerushalayim. We take these things for granted, and it's a shame. And the government could do a lot more to stop taking those things for granted. The Dead Sea, stop taking it for granted. And people would of course respond to it.
Which is more important for Israel, Judaism or democracy?
Judaism. Democracy is a good value, and probably democracy. Judaism has a lot of elements of democracy in it, but Israel is not a democracy. Israel has some democratic values, but certainly not just Judaism as in Torah, but Jewish peoplehood trumps democracy. This is not a country that's meant to be equal for all. It's meant to be a nation state. It favors the national ethnic group called the Jewish people. It has to favor it. That's what a nation state does. Therefore, it's at odds with full democratic principles. That has to be subservient to, democracy has to be subservient to Jewish and Judaism. There's no doubt about that. Democracy there's many beautiful aspects of democracy. I think Judaism incorporates many of them in its very essence. But if you ask, is Israel democratic or Jewish? It certainly has to be Jewish first, and then have democratic principles that help govern it. But democracy is not God. Moreover, democracy by its very root is a Greek word. This is not a Greek country. This is a Jewish country.
Should Israel treat its Jewish and non-Jewish citizens the same?
What do you mean by the same?
However you would answer, you can qualify as you like.
It has to treat them with honor and dignity and give them upward mobility and opportunity. But to say that it has to give them full equality is not correct. You cannot give non-Jews full equality to govern the affairs of the state in the same way, or else they will take it to a different...
What would that mean practically?
It means practically that I prefer to see that non-Jews would have residency in this land, or some kind of limited voting, means that they could vote, but they would only have, let's say there's 120 Knesset members, they would have 3. Constitutionally limited. They would have some representation, but they cannot govern and decide if the army is going to be kosher or not kosher. And certainly they cannot be jihadist and be in our Knesset. I mean, there's an absurdity. There's an absurdity. No democracy in the world has haters of the country within their Knesset, yet we have, because we're, more democratic than the Pope, or I don't know what, we're more Catholic than the Pope, that we allow jihadists to be inside of our Knesset. So I say again, it's not just a rational way of thinking, it's also a Torah way of thinking. The Torah tells you, yes, there is going to be Ger Toshav. Ger
Toshav being the biblical category.
Ger Toshav is literally translated as resident alien. That's an American. When I lived in America, at some point I was a resident alien. I became a citizen. But that's America. America's a full democracy for anybody that lives there.
Would critics be incorrect in saying that you want non-Jews in Israel to be second-class citizens?
I don't want them to be citizens. I want them to be residents. And the word second-class citizen is a purposefully derogatory phrase. It's purposefully negative to try to show you as being, but as being, not caring about other humans and not caring about equality. But the fact is, the Jewish people, this is a reservation. This is an Indian reservation. It's a small enclave in the Middle East, surrounded by Arabs who have no concept of equality whatsoever. We don't have equality in any of their lands. And therefore, we're like a small little place that tries to protect itself. Like regular Americans don't have the same rights inside an Indian reservation, right? Because that place is meant to protect them from that outside influence. And so is Israel. It's a nation state. It's not designed to give equality for all. On the other hand, the Torah is like, yes, of course, you're a nation state. You're not meant to give equality to all. But then there's this category of people called resident alien, Ger Toshav, who want to live amongst you. Give them every right and every opportunity. Not every right, every opportunity. And give them decencies and rights and obligations. We never talk about obligations. We're always talking about what we're supposed to give the Arabs. Where's their damn obligations? To serve in the army, to serve this country, and to not be jihadists. Where's the obligations? We barely ever talk about that. We have them running amok around here. The Negev is full of protection rackets. Every Jewish business pays protection money to a Bedouin tribe. Everyone. I've literally asked them myself, businesses, I'm like, do you pay protection money? They're like, yeah, we pay 5,000 shekel a month so they don't burn down this place. So we've allowed the majority of this region to run amok inside our minority country. So yeah, I don't believe that Israel is meant to be a country of equality. It's meant to be a country of decencies and opportunities. And Ger Toshav, yes, you love our country. You will have great opportunities to live, to build a beautiful house, to have great medicine, to have your kids go to great schools. But don't you dare be jihadist or anti-Israel. And yeah, respect our laws. And that, by the way, what I'm saying now, the issue of equality, that is an issue that's completely Western. It's a Western concept. It's not a Middle Eastern concept. No Arab around here thinks about equality.
So not to be provocative, but...
You can be provocative. It's your show.
I try not to be provocative.
It's your show. Also, not to be provocative is just to be provocative.
It's a proviso. It's a preface that probably the question may come off that way, but that's not my intention or desire.
Go ahead,
but
Shirley.
What you seem to be describing is what many critics of Israel say when they say that Israel is an apartheid state, and that, the vocal large majority of, let's say vast majority of pro-Israel voices say that's not true. Israel's a democracy, equal rights, it's a Jewish and democratic state. But you seem to not be using the A word, if we may, but essentially saying that you want a nice apartheid, that where there is two different systems for Jews and non-Jews. And that doesn't necessarily mean that non-Jews won't have nice houses or get certain privileges and have obligations and however you want to frame that. But it does seem to be leaning into that. Is that a characterization that you think is correct or incorrect? And if so, why?
I think that my colleagues in the Hasbara world, they fall into traps too easily. They think that the way that you deal with criticism is by being like, no, 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 we're nothing like you're describing. Instead of being like, actually, let's look into what you're saying and make it clear what we're actually offering. And
So you're not saying no.
I'm not saying no, but I'm also saying, first thing is, what you're saying is hyper Western. It makes it look like there's only two things in this world: radical equality or apartheid. But that's just not true. You go around the world and you see there are many nation states that favor their national peoples. Okay, around here, every country is a nation state. They give privileges to their people as opposed to other minorities. Go to the UAE, go to Saudi Arabia, and then what does the Hasbara people say? They say, oh, but we're not Saudi Arabia. Why not? Calm down. I don't mind being a Middle Eastern people. I don't mind being a Middle Eastern country with certain democratic principles. But it's right. I'm not here to give away the farm. I'm not here to give total equality to the Arabs that are the vast majority of this region. How many Arabs are there in this region? 400 million. How many Jews are there? 7 million. So we have a little enclave to defend ourselves. To give them total equality would mean that they would wash us out. And if you read the the League of Nations mandate that was given to the British, called the Mandate for Palestine, i.e. a mandate for Jewish Palestine, it's clear that they want us not to take away the local people's civil rights and religious rights, but nobody's going to grant them total political rights. You can't grant the minority inside of you that's the majority outside of you total equality and political rights. It's just absurd. It's stupidity. And my friends in the Hasbara, they get nervous about the questions that you ask. And then they start saying stupid things like, oh, yeah, we're willing to give total equality. That's stupid. It's stupid. It undermines the premise.
Meaning essentially a more forward way of saying what you're saying is that Israel can be apartheid, but apartheid isn't always bad.
I am not using that. That is a
meaning.
word.
I agree.
Apartheid was white people that came, Europeans that came into Africa, took over a chunk of land, and then made the group of people.
So you might say that Israel wants a system.
It's not an apartheid.
I'm saying so. Israel wants a system in which Jewish.
No, but see, you've used.
Well,
that
I'm
word
trying
now.
I'm trying to recharacterize.
Surely,
what you're
you've
saying.
used that word about 10 times now. But I refuse to use that word because that word is a ma'us. What's the word I'm looking for in English? It's
disgusting.
It's a horrific word of subjugation. I'm not talking about subjugation.
So we can take away the label. I mean, I'm trying to.
The label is very important because the label is used as a cudgel by the enemies of Israel to try to paint it as something bad. There are many nation states in this world. There are many states that favor their ethnic group as opposed to other groups. Look at do you think the Kurds that are hated by the Iranians, the Turks, and the Syrians should give equality to all these people inside of autonomous Kurdistan in northern Iraq? Of course not, because they're trying to protect themselves. We are a persecuted people. We're the ones that need protection. Why are we talking about rights for them? What about rights for us? Do we have any rights in their countries? No, we have no rights. We barely have rights to be there. It's still illegal. You know what I mean? It's like barely rights for us to fly over their countries. So what are we talking about here? That we want to protect our peoplehood and we want to give people decencies, but not to let them take the country over. It's reasonable. It's reasonable. And if Americans would know a little bit more about comparative democracy and how other countries do it, they would calm down. Americans all think that there's only one way, which is the American way. America is an amazing and special country. It's not like that all over the world. It's far from that. Far from that, you know? And by the way, even in great United States, do Puerto Ricans have a right to vote for president of the United States? No, because they're a territory. Do they have a right to vote for congressmen and senators? Well, kind of, but they're non-voting congressmen and senators. So basically, and there are 2 million of them, Puerto Ricans. And so people say to me, well, it's different. I just say, look, even the United States has an alternative system for whenever they need, when it's comfortable for them. So let's calm down and not use labels that are there created by our enemies for us to say stupid things and to let the enemy in through the back door. Let's kind of open our eyes and realize, what do we need to govern and keep this place safe? Which is the first priority of the Jewish state. And then afterwards, let's talk about, how we incorporate people more. But the Torah says to us, there is a way, but it is limited.
Now that Israel already exists, what's the purpose of Zionism?
What does that mean?
You tell me.
Zionism is the building of the Jewish state. Zionism is not defined I don't. I like the term Zionism, but if a Haredi person doesn't like that term, I don't mind speaking in a different way. Called Shivat Zion, called the return to Zion. I've had many arguments, and when it turns out it comes down to like nomenclature. You don't like that nomenclature? I don't care. I'm not trying to like. You don't have to wave the blue and white flag. I don't care. You don't have to say the word Zionism. You don't have to like Ben Gurion. Zionism, the way I understand it, is Shivat Zion. It's the ingathering of the exiles. It's building of the Jewish state. Is it finished? Of course not. Is it finished? No. Do we have a well-running Jewish state? Not yet. Is it totally defended? Not yet. Is Yerushalayim totally built? Not yet. Do we have a Beit HaMikdash? Not yet. Is everybody in a God consciousness? Is Israel, the Jerusalem, the spiritual capital of the world? Not yet. So there's plenty of work for Shivat Zion, the building of Yerushalayim, and this process of ingathering the exiles. Happens to be, by the way, that I live on a street called Shivat Zion.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so
You're living in the future, you might say.
Huh?
You're living in the future.
Well,
you might
or
say.
in the past, Shivat Zion was the term
Yeah,
used by the Second Temple by Ezra and Nehemiah. It's a beautiful term. You don't like Zionism because of associations? I don't care. I don't need you. I always tell people where I work in Hebron, I always tell them, we can be blue and white, but we also have to know how to talk black and white. I could talk secular. I could talk, the Sanhedrin, every member of the Sanhedrin was supposed to speak 70 languages. I think it means 70 kinds of Jews that you got to know how to talk with. You want to talk Breslov, we can talk Rabbeinu. You want to talk Rabbeinu, you want to talk Shlomo Karlbach, it's the most beautiful thing in the world. And you want to whatever.
Yeah.
I could talk to any Jew and get him and her to sense that. The project of Israel, in short, is far from finished. We have a lot to do. And it's actually very exciting. I can tell you about my personal life is that I have a lot to do. Like, I'm busy. I'm very, very busy. Like, taking whatever Kadosh Baruch Hu has put in my hands to do and to move it forward. Not to mention bringing American Jews closer. Not to mention, I work in Hebron. It's far from finished. I mean, the place is like it's like after Dresden, after the bombings. You know what I mean? The place needs a lot of work to turn it into just a city, let alone a Jewish city. So there's just a lot of work to do. Not to Gaza. I just took recently a tractor course. I have a tractor license now because I hope that they'll send me to help dig out the rubble of Gaza so that we can make that beautiful land beautiful again. By the way, I tweeted out one point, make Gaza beautiful again. And then like 3 hours later, like Rubio tweeted out, make Gaza beautiful again. I don't know if you read my tweet, but the point is that my point is there's a ton of work to do. And Yerushalayim is being built. There's children to educate. There's Abraham Accords to make. As a Jewish Israeli nationalist, I'm the number one fan of relationship with the Arab countries around us. A proud Jewish state surrounded by proud Arab states working together. So yeah, gosh almighty, the project is far from over. And I don't quite understand the people who say things like that, like the Zionism is over. I don't know what they mean by that. They must not be in the fray. They must not be in action. I'm involved in action. That's my favorite part of what I do. I'm involved, like I'm a YouTuber and a social media person, but like that's like a third of what I do. The rest of the time I'm involved in building.
Is opposing Zionism inherently anti-Semitic?
Probably. You could probably judge it. You know it when you see it, but most likely if you encounter anti-Zionism, it's anti-Judaism. But what does it matter? Because by that question, are you saying that anti-Semitism is a real bad, but anti-Zionism is not a real bad? It's like, if you're anti-Zionist, that's bad enough for me. Like I don't need to equate that to anti-Semitism. What does it matter to me? If you're anti my country, my Jewish state, it's like saying anti-American. Do you also have to be anti-Christian or something? Like, who cares? The minute you're anti-Israel, that's bad enough. I don't need to find a way to prove that you're also anti-Jewish. So what? So that the haters are like, well, I'm not anti-Jewish. I'm just anti the Jewish state. Like, who cares? What am I giving you a pass for that? Oh, he's not really an anti-Semite. He's just anti-Israel. What points do you gain for that?
Should Israel be a religious state?
Well, first thing, Israel should certainly not be an anti-religious state. That's first and foremost.
Meaning what?
Meaning to say that it has to, have a kosher army, keep the Sabbath, and respect Jewish tradition, and certainly not do stupid things like giving away our land to our enemies, our holy land. Like, that's part of religion also. Like, giving away Hebron to the Hamas is stupid. and anti-Jewish and anti-historical and anti-security and anti-Middle East. So don't do stupid things and anti-Jewish things. That's first, Like first is like, don't do harm to Judaism. Like don't do harm and don't do harm to our land. And then we want a process. Of course, we'd like to see a process of people becoming more observant and the Jewish state to be promoting that. It should promote the Bible. China's got these Confucius centers that they have around the world. They teach Chinese culture and Chinese language, and we should have the same thing. Like Hebrew is holy, the Torah is holy. We have an amazing thing. The Jewish state should not coerce people to be observant. Okay? Certainly not in the constellation that we have today, but it certainly should not coerce people to be not observant. It should teach them the basics. It should foster a love of Yiddishkeit, a love of Israel, a love of the land, a love of Yerushalayim, and not do stupid things that undermine and not fund our enemies that certainly unteach Judaism. And it should not favor a kind of either neutral or hostile approach. It should love the Bible. It should have a museum of the Bible that is in love with it, as opposed to not loving it and having this kind of scientific cold approach. So yeah, it should foster Yiddishkeit. The Jewish state does that when it provides electricity to a yeshiva. It's already teaching Judaism in that sense, and it does a lot of that. And the fact is that Judaism flourishes, and it's flourishing in the land of Israel. That's a fact. But it could do more. And it could definitely, like, for example, let Jews pray on the Temple Mount. Don't establish a synagogue there, like some rabbis wanted. Like, don't shut our mouths up in favor of the jihadist conception that we shouldn't pray on the Temple Mount. Don't do that.
If you were making the case for Israel, where would you begin?
I don't know. That's a very broad question. You're gonna have to limit that for me. I don't know.
How so?
What do you mean?
You tell me.
Well, where to begin? Well, there's different ways to begin. I guess one way to begin is by.
Where do you tend to begin?
It depends on the crowd. It depends on the people. But I think if you're talking politically, the first thing to remember is it really depends where you want to start. It depends.
You can start
on
where
the
you
type of
like.
people.
I'll give you the freedom.
Well, it depends, but I would say one simple conception that everybody has to have is to remember that Israel is a tiny country in this region. Like that's a baseline thing. I think a lot of times when people forget that one of the enemy's great successes has been to change Israel into the Goliath and to the Arabs as a David. Like that is a falsity that needs to be righted, which is that we're a tiny country trying to survive out here. That's like a basic. Like once you get that in your head, Israel's a tiny country trying to survive in a very tough region. Like that. That's one. Another thing that you have to, know is the Bible, and the Bible's a great place to start. And the Bible's where a lot of stuff started, but sadly, to my dismay, the Bible has been very undermined in the last 100 years. Very undermined. If you went to Harvard 100 years ago and even 200 years ago, people knew the Bible. Some of them knew the Bible in Hebrew. Today, young people don't know the Bible at all, not to mention their own classics as well, of Western literature or European literature. And so, I would love to see a campaign in Israel and around the Jewish world of the Book of Bereshit. I think the Book of Bereshit, you ask where to begin? The Book of Bereshit in the beginning. It's a great place to begin. And I recently spoke to almost 100 kids in young Judea, and I asked them, how many of you can honestly say you have read the Book of Bereshit? And 7, 8 kids out of 100 raised their hands. And I'm not sure that they're holding, as we say. So I think that if you know the Book of Bereshit, you understand, you may not agree with, but you understand Abraham. You understand that we're a family, that we're a nation, we're a peoplehood, and you understand that there's a land associated with it. You understand that there's a God that you talk with. It's a very basic concept. Book of Bereshit, if you can get through the Book of Bereshit, you got everything. Agree or not agree, you'll get it. You'll get even our branding and our stuff. You'll get it. And without it, you won't get it. So that's another part of it. I think maybe one more thing is to know that the Jewish people are eternal. That's a very core concept. You have to know that the Jewish people, come what may, we will survive. Even if, God forbid, the Jewish state and the Beis HaMikdash falls again. God forbid. I don't believe it will. But we have to know that Am Yisrael continues. We are linked up with God. And one thing that I would recommend outside of the book of Bereshit, that famous passage by Mark Twain about the Jewish people, about how they endure throughout time. What is their secret? That they have seen all other great empires come and go. That should be basic reading. Every kid should know that. Every kid should know that. They should know that Am Yisrael is eternal and that it's a mystery and that there's only one way to explain it. So I would say those three things. The eternity of the Jewish people, the book of Bereshit is key to having basic conceptions and remembering on the political level that at the end we're small people trying to survive in a tough region.
Should all Israelis serve in the army?
I have a very thought out answer for that, and here's the answer. Okay, all I mean to say is this is not off the cuff. This has been thought out a lot, and here's my answer, as opposed to some of my colleagues. My answer is simple. Every Israeli should serve for 2 years. Every Israeli. Girls, boys, Ashkenazim, Sfaradim, Chilonim, Datiim, Aravim, Druzim, Cherkesim, whoever you are, all the various groups that we have in Israel should serve for 2 years. But what does service mean? It could mean a very broad thing. It could mean national service. I would broaden the national service concept much bigger. And so, you're a Haredi, you want to teach Yiddish, so there's a Yiddish Amuta 501, non-for-profit company. Great, work there. They have a right to 2 boys every year in their organization to have national service because they're a non-for-profit. Fine. You want to go to Zaka, Mada, police, firefighting? Fine. You're an Arab? You want to teach Arabic? Fine. You want to help with kindergartens? Fine. I don't care. But you will come out with a card that says, I served my 2 years. Now, the Army has preference. It will pay more money. It will give you more kavod. And if you're going to be in a special unit, you can sign in for a 3rd year, 4th year. Fine, you sign. That's your department. We will incentivize the Army. But you don't want to do the Army, it's fine. But you will have to serve for 2 years. There is no super citizenship like the Arabs have today. There is no super citizenship where you get everything but no obligations. You're going to have to serve for 2 years. Everybody, equalize it. Is there some people that will learn Torah? Absolutely. Learning Torah is a high value. So there'll be a certain amount, 20,000 people who learn Torah, but they'll get that card. I served because I did that great and important job of continuing the learning Torah for our country. I got no problem with that. I believe that there should be people learning Torah all the time. But everybody's got to get under some kind of rubric. Now, here's the key though. It's got to be in the branding that people like. The ultra-Orthodox like their branding. They like their branding. They don't like the Zionist branding. They don't like that brand. They don't like blue and white. They don't want that. They want their media, their fonts, their way. Give it to them. Give it to them in their way. Let them feel like they're the bosses of that thing. But everybody will come out serving, doing a national service, and there will be no exceptions. And this way, you've gotten rid of all these fights. Everybody's got these deals. Everybody's got these side deals. No more side deals. Just equalize it. Make it simple for people to understand. Just decide what kind of national service you're going to do. You want to do the Army? Gesundheit. We're going to be very happy, and we'll pay you more. You want to go 3 years? Go for 3 years. But the baseline will be equal for everybody.
Can questioning the actions of Israel's government and army, even in the context of this war, can that be considered a valid form of love and patriotism?
Well, I think we've done that on this podcast so far, right? I've made some claims that I'm, that there are things that the state of Israel does that I'm not happy with. Could be done better. I mean, we come from America, where that democratic principle of challenging your country is considered patriotism. I am a patriot. I am a as we say, saruf. I am, patriot through and through. But I will not also at the same time, therefore, make kosher all kinds of ridiculous actions that are not kosher. And I'll call them out as a patriot. But I'm not an Israel hater. you know it when you see it. Where does it come from? What's the source of that critique? You'll have people that critique Israel feigning patriotism, but in fact, they are Israel shrinkers and Israel destroyers. They just feign that they are, that they're Zionists or that they're pro-Israel, whatever it is. I'm pro-Israel, but I'm really, but really they're really trying to shrink and destroy Israel and undermine its people and its army, etc. So I don't come from that. But to answer your question directly, sure, you have every right to continue to help steer the country in the right direction.
What do you think is the most legitimate criticism leveled against Israel today?
I think that the real criticisms are barely leveled and the fake ones are constantly leveled. The biggest criticism should be that we've done a great disservice to the Arabs and to the Jews by creating the Palestinian Authority and paying these terrorists money. And these men, these people, they are these bullies, these thugs. They do the most harm and evil to Arabs. So by creating the Palestinian Authority, we gave away our land. We empowered jihadists. We empowered people who subjugate their own people. We've done a great evil. That is an evil, and that should be rectified. And that evil is against. That evil has taught the world jihadism and terrorism, and has, when we allow them to build up those terror tunnels, and I barely hear that. I barely hear a critique being like, "What the hell happened? How did you allow your enemies to, under your nose, build up a military infrastructure to attack you?" Like, October the 7th is just a manifestation of that awful failure. And it could happen in Judea and Samaria as well. It could happen in the north as well. It could happen in the south as well. So we've allowed our enemies and people detractors of our country to really have built up a serious infrastructure and then a global consciousness. Israel's weak Hasbara, weak brand, weak branding has allowed an alternative narrative to seep into the minds of millions, including the TikTok generation. So there's a lot of critique that can be leveled against the state of Israel. I mean, really, the world hates us, and that in my mind, that is 100% the fault of weak policy.
Do you think the state of Israel is part of the final redemption? This would be your easiest question.
Well, it is an easy question for me. In the sense
No, I'm joking.
that it's easy for me to say yes. But I have reservations about that way of talking. Because
So can you first explain why you say yes, and then explain the reservations?
I think
whichever way.
Here's the simple answer. God said that he's going to gather the Jewish people to the land of Israel in the final days, and that's happening. I think that Jerusalem is being built, and I'm certain, without a shadow of a doubt, that within 100 years there'll be a Beit HaMikdash. I have no doubt about that. There will be a temple in Jerusalem on the same spot. It's just, it will not, there's nothing that could stop it. It's a juggernaut. It's a giant juggernaut. It's just going its way that is not always understandable, its path, but it is heading in that way, and there's just no stopping it. There's 7 million Jews today in the land of Israel. When I was a kid, there was 3 million Jews. I have no doubt that we're heading in that general direction. That being said, I have a bug inside that doesn't like Messianism as a language. Okay, because I find that people that engage in Messianic style language oftentimes stop being involved in actually get it done action on the ground. They become Mashiach will fix it. No, Rak Mashiach Yazor. They start to talk in these ways that I'm allergic to. These ways that basically lop off passive. They throw off responsibility and free agency, and they start talking in this way as though something other than their own agency and responsibility will take care of business. And I abhor that, and I think that Hashem abhors that. I think that Hashem wants us, and I think that the advent of the Jewish state, in many ways, the reason that the Chilonim, that the secular were the ones that built up the state, was to inculcate back into Jewish consciousness the midah, the characteristic trait of action. We are meant to take action. When in Egypt it says Hashem ilachem lachem vatem tacharishun, that God will fight for you and you'll be silent. That's because they were slaves coming out of Egypt. That's a negative. Later on, when we come to the land of Israel, we're like Joshua. We're fighting, and God is helping us. But we're meant to fight and to do things. We're meant to take responsibility and take agency. And so therefore, I think that Israel has to do things that are right and good and smart and to protect every Jew. And I think that there is a consciousness that will come forth from Jerusalem. I believe that Jerusalem is the spiritual capital of the world. And I think that Israel should be teaching that, should be teaching what I call the Abrahamic faith, which is a way for Gentiles, non-Jews, peoples of the world to follow Judaism for non-Jews. There is a way like that that's being developed. And I do think that it is redemptive, and I do think that it is, the goal of this world, that Hashem's dream is coming to fruition. But I chafe at language that will make it not physically real, dreamlike, and does not call on every person to take a step. In my speeches that I give to people, I always say, take a step. Take a step. What is your step? And I give people examples of steps. For example, around the world I've spoken, from Australia to Europe to around the world I've spoken, and I've said, Friday night, drink bottle of wine from the land of Israel. Buy that bottle of wine. Show it off to people. Take that little step. Say, here I am. I want to imbibe the waters of the land of Israel, the wine. And people have taken that suggestion throughout the world. Take a step. I always tell people, take a step. And then I have a range of other steps leading all the way to Aliyah and army, whatever it is. You know what I mean? Take a step. Sometimes, by the way, it's just learning the halachot of Eretz Israel. The Avnei Nezer talks about the fact that his father did a kinyan on Eretz Israel just by studying the halachot of Eretz Israel. Like sometimes, like, yearn for it. Take a step. Do it. Take. Don't relegate it to some kind of Disney-ish, dreamlike, kind of, foggy thing. You know what I mean? No. It's action based. Take a step towards Yiddishkeit, take a step towards Israel, make sure that you come here once a year, etc., etc. Take that step, and don't. That's why I chafe at Messianism.
So, actually, this is into our next question. Is Messianism helpful or harmful to Israel?
It depends how you use it. If you're like, if you are like, heck, I think there's a messianic process, and I better darn get on that boat, be part of that. I want to be part of that. And then you say, Hashem, please let me be part. Because I know that if I'm born in this time, you chose my soul to be in this body at this time. That means that you want me to be part of this process. And so just this is what my parish is, 10 chelkeinu b'toratecha. Give me a role. Let me have, one officer stripe and do something. I just want to be an officer in your efforts, in your armies, please. Let me have a touch of it, a schut to be part of it. If that's what you think is Messianism, if you're like, Israel is great, this is a moment in time, I want to be part of it, then that's fine. But if you think, Hashem is doing it really, like, like Hashem, like, this is crazy, this government's crazy, these things are crazy, there's nothing to do. Hashem's got to take care of everything. That is a type of passivity which I think is reprehensible, is wrong. I don't know if reprehensible, I take that word back. It's wrong. It's a mistake. It's a wrong way of thinking. And I want to tell you about goyim, people from the nations that I deal with also. And oftentimes they just say to me, like, God is doing great things. That's my southern accent. Okay, God is doing great things. I hang out my wife is a Texan. I hang out in Texas a lot. So it's like, these people see that God is doing great things. The promises of the Bible are coming to fruition. And that is the reason why there's so many non-Jews that are so into Israel, because they're just like, that thing that my mama taught me about the Bible, that's happening. I see it. I see it with my own eyes. So be part of it. Be part of it. Find a way to plug in. There's stories of Israeli generals who are like in wars or like dejected until they get like a role. Like they're like throw me, put me in, coach. Put me in, right? Winners want the ball when the game is on the line. One of the football movies said, I want to be in, coach. Put me in. I don't want to be passive. So that's, Listen, there were great Jews from the Arizal to the Gra, and this podcast is called 1840.
Yeah, the company. This
The
is 18.
company,
Yeah,
right? This is 18
questions, 40s,
18
right?
questions, 40
Thinkers. Yeah,
thinkers. But 1840 is and I guessed that correctly,
yeah, you
right?
did. The first I've heard someone intuitively say it.
Right, and that is because the Gra envisioned that 1840 was a messianic year, that there was going to be and he was right. He was not wrong. I don't know if exactly 1840, but that whole period, I think he was right. But basically, the period of redemption. What did he do? He sent his people to the land of Israel to build it, and the Talmidei Hagra, they built Yerushalayim. They built these places. Yom Moshe Solomon, v'chule, the Churva synagogue, and also the Hasidim, and the Baal Shem Tov also saw it. And so I'm of those people. I sense that there is let's call it messianic moment or a godly moment of the land of Israel, and you want to be part of it. Just the other day, I was with dinner with some people, and there was one guy talking, and I could see, and I said to him, "You have it. You feel the call of the land of Israel, don't you?" And he's like, "Yes." I'm like, "What are you doing about it? Did you buy that apartment yet?" That's what, by the way, what I say to all Jews outside of the land of Israel: buy that apartment. Take that step. It's good for your money as well. Take the step. Be part of it. Yearn to be part of it, and ask Hashem, Rabbi Nachman style. Ask Hashem. Be like, "Help me, please. Let me have a small role in your great plan."
Do you think peace between Israelis and Palestinians will happen within your lifetime?
Absolutely. It could have happened a long time ago. I think the Abraham Accords is already the beginning of that.
What do you mean a long time ago?
Had Israel acted properly and with clarity, after the 6-Day War, we could have had total. We had a kind of peace, but they spurned it. They wasted it.
They being
The Israeli leadership. They wasted the opportunity. First thing is I must say that the word Palestinians, I say in quotes, that is a created identity, more like a sports team that I am a fan of. There is no historical Palestine. It never existed. There is no group of people called Palestinians, except for a group of people now that self-identify as being part of a team called Palestine, which is really an anti-Israel brand and narrative. And there is no historic Palestine. It never existed. There is no coins, Palestinian coins. There is no Palestinian king. It didn't exist in history. We had two commonwealths here 3,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. There is a thing called Israel. It's a nation. It's a people. There was a land here called Judea, Israel, whatever. It has a deep history. There is no history of Palestine. They never had a commonwealth here. They never had a capital here. So the thing is a recent creation. It is mostly an anti-Israel brand. I don't deny that there are people who self-identify as Palestinians today. There is a group of people who would call themselves that, but I would liken them more to people who follow a sports team. You know what I mean? And not in a national sense. They're now part of this team. Will there be peace with these people? Absolutely. If you would give them clarity.
What do you think it takes?
It takes clarity. Clarity means I will tell you what is legal and what is illegal. How you can matriculate and live in a Jewish state. How do you do it? You have to follow the laws, respect the laws. You have to have the flag of Israel in your village. Okay, you have to have a muhtar that we can, head of a tribe that we can talk with. You have to make sure that you have to understand that if jihadism comes out of your village will be exiled. You will not be able to. We will not abide that kind of stuff. You cannot teach it in your mosque, in your schools, or in your social media. You can't teach it. If you teach that kind of stuff, you have no place here. And those that will accept it, which are many, they will be able to live here with upward mobility, and they will be happy. And if you're not happy to live in a Jewish state because it offends your Arab, Muslim, whatever identity, then leave. But basically, interesting. I just remembered that somebody was telling me that the problem with the Jews is that they don't always understand the difference between strength and violence. They think that strength and violence is the same thing. Like a suppression of jihadist instincts is through strength. And only at the very end of it does it need to be through violence. But asserting governance, shlita in Hebrew, lishlot, is a key way to work in the Middle East. If you don't have the gumption, the kind of wherewithal inside to lishlot, to control, then you're not going to make it here in the Middle East. If you're willing to lishlot, to govern, then the Arabs will line right up without a problem. They'll be like, absolutely, we understand the rules. And those that don't will be exiled, fought, whatever it is.
In 2017, I don't know, I assume you recall, you wrote an article in the New York Times. I believe it was called "The Jewish Settlers' View of the Future of Israel" or something like
Yeah.
that. Do you
You,
feel?
you know, you said that so lightly. Like you wrote an article. That was I had a published article in the New York Times,
Yeah.
of which later on there was an article about how they fought in the newsroom, in the opinion,
Oh, I hadn't seen that
about
article.
just how it was an article about a few different things that they fought over, but one of them was over that article and how it was hard for them to publish it, but they published it. Yeah.
I hold in such high regard. In my mind, it's like it's Pasha. But
What's that?
no, I was joking. I said I hold in such high regard. I didn't even take it as such a
It's
huge
a
credit.
it's a big deal. To
No,
get
it is.
that
It is a
published
big
there,
deal.
for them to let something like that through.
And so I was curious if you see, because I don't remember the article by heart, and I'm sure you've written many things, so you may not remember it by heart either. It does seem as
I remember.
if. Oh, you do remember? Okay, yeah, I assume so.
It was about 5 alternatives to the two-state solution.
Yeah, so what I am curious about is if you feel as if, or if you think that your view, if you would have changed anything that you've written at that point, given everything that's happened in the last 7 years. Because it does seem as if, and it could be that you changed your tone a little bit for the audience and curating it for the New York Times, but it does seem as if there's a different attitude you feel toward what the next steps in peace or in that messianic process is. Do you think I'm right or wrong? You tell me.
Yeah, no, I think that you're. I don't know. I don't. Look, I'm older now.
No, I'm not. I'm
One
not.
second, one
by the way,
second.
I'm not saying that's
I'm
right
a-
or wrong. I'm making an observation and asking
I'm,
asking a
I'm
question.
older now. I'm raising 3 children. I had a big surgery recently, which was also a spiritual, physical experience. You know what I mean? A life experience.
Oh wow.
You know, I there was this war. I was in the army. I was called back into reserve duty. But the basic ideas about how to deal with Israel have not really changed.
Mhm.
So really, the truth is, vis-a-vis that article, I have it on my wall. I could read it right now to you, and it will be practically the same. I gave alternatives to the two-state solution, including Jordan. Jordan is Palestine. Gave that option. I gave the option of other intellectuals that
Yeah.
I read. I put them
Yeah.
together. I wasn't trying to make my own argument. You know, there's other ways to do it. I still think that the answers are simpler than
Mhm.
people make them out to be.
Mhm.
For some reason, there's become complexity worship. There's this great need to complexify things, and when you offer up plans that are
Straightforward.
straightforward and not so complex, people just reject them because they just think it's impossible. But the truth is, and by the way, Trumpism is also a return to certain kind of like basic principles. A straightforwardness, as you said. I like that. I offered up, and I still offer up, that Israel controls Judea and Samaria and other lands, Gaza, whatever it is. I hope the Sinai as well one day. And it asserts sovereignty over these places, gives residency to people and gives them a decent life, fights jihadism, and lives and has an Abraham Accords relationship with the Arabs around us. It's all so simple. It's really not tricky. All you have to do is want to govern. Lishlot. That's all you have to do. And if you do that, it's fine. You root out jihadism, which is not hard. It's not hard. You kick out. By the way, do you know that in Azerbaijan, there was a group of Armenians living there for like 700 years, and they never really got along with the Azeris. And Russia became a little bit weaker because of its Ukraine war. And one day, about 2 years ago, they made it public, and that they want to see the Armenians leave. And within 48 hours, 200,000 Armenians left Nagorno Karabakh in Azerbaijan. Okay, people know how to rule when you need to. People know how to govern. They're like, no more. I'm sorry, you're out, and they left without a bullet fired. Because there's a difference between strength and violence. My point is, bad guys got to go. Good guys can stay. Here's the framework of what you're allowed and what not allowed. You could choose it if you want. Believe me, you're going to get better health care and better roads and better decencies and better fiscal opportunities, financial opportunities than other places. Yes, no. We rule this land. We're not taking over other people's lands because we're nationalists, not colonialists. We're here to take our land, not other people's land. Arabs live next door. We should speak Arabic. We should know their language, and we should help create a railroad that crisscrosses this region. And we should help them. We should help the Iranian people get rid of the Iranian regime. We should be a force of good and a force of strength and a force of stability in this region. And we have to make it clear that Yerushalayim is our holy city, not other people's holy city. You want to come pray at our temple? Ki beiti beiti kara lekol tefila, ki beiti beit tefila yikra lekol ha'amim. It's a house of prayer for all nations. But the Temple Mount is Jewish.
Mhm.
You know, and people will accept that. That's another thing. The Israeli left has no sense of what Arabs will respect. They have no sense of it. They're so obtuse about how to talk with Arabs. Arabs will respect it when you're strong and clear and forthright. They will not respect when you're wishy-washy and wimpy. And that's the message we broadcast, and that's a shame.
Where do you identify on Israel's political and religious spectrum? And do you have any friends on the quote unquote other side?
Well, I'm a religious Zionist, but I'm not a religious Zionist by birth. I'm a religious Zionist by belief system that I've come to. What I mean by that is that I'm not from the Bnei Akiva Rav Kook stream. I don't come from there. I don't come out of that. I have adopted parts of it, but I also have adopted that within streams of Chassidut and Chabad and Gra and Sephardi type stuff. So I'm really a kind of one time a Knesset member who passed away, Rabbi Ravitz, said to me, "I know what you are. You're Chabakuk."
Mm.
Chabakuk stands for Chabad,
Yeah.
Breslov Karlbach,
Oh, wow.
Kahana, Cook, right? Don't forget that also. And so it's Chabakuk. And so I'm like, yeah, I really feel connected to those streams of, you know, Eretz Yisrael, a sense of mysticism, a sense of a love of Judaism, a
And
love of Torah.
politically, I assume.
Politically, so the question is, who do you vote for? So I voted for and worked for Minister Ben-Gvir last time, but that doesn't mean I'm totally satisfied with that. And there's many people. There's great people in the Likud, like Amita Levi, who I like a lot. I thought that the ambassador to the UN, Gilad Erdan, was very good. I think that Netanyahu is sometimes good,
Hmm.
sometimes not.
And do you have friends on the other side of your political and religious identity?
I definitely have people that are interlocutors, but it's hard to be friends in a real way with people that you see as endangering, the Jewish state. So what do you mean by left? Do you mean other side? Do you mean people who are anti-Israel, or do you mean people who are, seculars? Well, so that's what I'm saying. But no, it's not so open because you said the other side. Well, what is the other side? I find myself not. There's very few people who are on the other side. The other side are people who are anti-Israel. So people who are anti-Israel are not my friends. I don't have any.
So let's say the Israeli left.
Well, what do you mean by Israeli left? Because Israeli
Well,
left can mean because it could mean.
In any of those definitions, are the people you're friends with, and if so,
Yes,
you're welcome
because
to say.
if you're like a secular but Zionist kibbutznik type, yes, I'll have acquaintances like that. But if you're like if you're like if you're like flaming anti-Netanyahu, anti-Ben-Gvir, anti-Smotrich, anti-Haredim, and that's all you're screaming all day long, it's hard to talk with people like that. And I,
Any other religious side?
what do you mean?
I guess let's say secular,
Secular?
and Haredi.
Secular is easier than politically left, because secular we could always. I find that God is invisible,
Mm-hmm.
and that it's not always easy for everybody to get on the same page. But giving away your land to your enemies, that's just stupid. So therefore, like it's harder to deal with somebody who believes those kind of things. God is like, let's talk about it, and maybe that secular person will put on tefillin or this and that. You know what I mean? Like the truth of the matter is that human beings, and certainly Jews, are a big spectrum. I am a fun person to be with. I speak with Arabs all the time. I have a good and easy rapport with Arabs. I naturally have an affinity for Middle East people. We have a certain language and a certain cadence that we can communicate on. And the same thing with the average person that you're going to meet in Israel. Israelis are great folks. The people of this country are gold. Uh, but is it easier to talk with somebody who shares with you Parshat Shavua and the Daf Yomi and a love of this land than somebody's going to talk with you about sports and about I don't know, the latest TV show or something like that? I don't have a great frame of reference for those other things.
Yeah.
So it's easier for me to deal with people who have what I have to share with. But look, the bottom line is we have a mitzvah of Ahavat Israel. We have a mitzvah to love fellow Jews. And I think that's also true about humanity. We have a mitzvah really to be a Mamlechet Konim v'Goy Kadosh. We're meant to be an emissary and a minister onto peoples of this world to bring them closer. So my job isn't to try to find differences. When I meet people, I don't try to find a way how I could argue with them and disagree with them. I try to find common ground. And there are millions, if not billions, of people who could love Israel and be part of this great story.
So for our last question, after
was this actually 18 questions?
a lot of there are a lot of follow-ups. Hopefully people don't always.
So it's 18. It's a Jewish 18.
Yeah.
It's 18
It used to be a strict 18, and everyone said we want more follow-ups. So now those are like the fine print.
18 headings. Okay. And is it really 40 guys? 40 men and women?
Yeah.
40 things?
You're 30.
I can't believe
10 more after you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So for our last question, do you have more...
Last full question?
Full question. Okay. Maybe a follow-up, depending on how you answer
okay.
it. Do you have more hope or fear for Israel and the Jewish people?
Oh, gosh. My whole life is full of hope. My whole entity is full of hope. But it's also a love of action. And a love of action, I guess, springs from hope. Yeah, I am ridiculously hopeful. I am unreasonably hopeful. I want to tell you again, I live in Gush Etzion, in Judea, south of here, and I came into Yerushalayim to film with you today. And I'm telling you, I'm living here 22 years. I was born here. There's not a time that I drive into Yerushalayim that I don't get like a thing, that I don't get like a zap. Mm. And I got it just from a building that was being built not far away from here, and it said like new office building, and I was just like, I just get I get it touches me a lot. There's not a day, and I mean this literally, not metaphorically, not a day goes by that I don't have a moment in the day where I'm just like, this is something. And it could be in shul, it could be from a pasuk, it could be a building that I see, it could be a flower, it could be a sunlight, it could be a cloud, it could be a child, could be Marat HaMachpelah in Hebron, it could be, there's always just something that is just like, no, it's a endless sense of joy with, from time to time, dread and disappointment and concern and fear. I mean, right now we've released, upwards of 2,000 murders, murders or would-be murderers. I mean, you know what I mean? What are you doing, Jewish state? What the hell are you doing? We're releasing these people, these murderers, and they will be future murderers. That is a statistical fact. And I have children, and I have a wife, and I have myself, and I have my friends, and I, do I dread? Am I out there? With tremendous hope, but also with a gun on my side and with a Shema Yisrael to protect the children? Yeah, definitely. But is it a sense that this is something great? Even though you look up sometimes to Shemayim and you say, Hashem, why we have such grasshopper leadership? Mazeh? You know what I mean? Why do we have such a, bureaucratic, bumbling middle state? Why do we have that? Yeah, but with all that, I know that Hashem's plan is happening. And again, I just say, please, Hashem, give us just the tiniest little zchut to be part of building it, part of touching it. And I help buy tractors for hilltops. I help, Hebron. We have a project of the tomb of Ruth and Yishai, which I've spearheaded the renovation of the last 3 years, just to see something become beautiful. Just when somebody tells me that they're going to fix their garden in Eretz Israel, I'm like, you are doing such a mitzvah. Yishuv Haaretz, what a zchut. It's just, what a merit to be part of it. When somebody gives me, I'm also a fundraiser. Somebody gives me $180, $1,800, $18,000. I'm like, you don't know what you just did. We're building the land of Israel in your zchut, in your merit. You're so lucky. So I am absurdly hopeful, and I think Hashem is absurdly hopeful. I think Avram is absurdly hopeful. I think David HaMelech is absurdly hopeful. I think Reish Lakish is absurdly hopeful. I think that Rav Mordechai Eliyahu is absurdly hopeful. I think Rav Shmuel Eliyahu is absurdly hopeful, and on and on and on. And there are great people in this generation, and we have the greatest merit to be part of it.
All right, no follow-ups. Thank you so much for answering our 18 questions. How was this for you?
Great, Shirley. Thank you very much. Big zchut. And I hope that we can. I hope Hashem gives us the zchut to keep being part of it.